So yeah, welcome back to my complete collection 2019. For this video, I'm going to be doing comic books. I'm gonna start out with some ones that I keep on my bookshelf. Some of them I keep on my bookshelf, some of them I keep in a comic box. I have a lot of them. I got like really into comic books for a while there and bought probably way more than I should have, but it's fine. So yeah, let's get started in no particular order. First up, Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 8, Omnibus Volume 1. I like Buffy, I like Joss Whedon, I like the series, and I've read the comics that are collected in this volume, but I haven't read this volume itself. See, when I first read them, I read them in the library edition formats. This isn't a very good background, is it? But, yeah, I read them in the library edition formats, but then I found out that these are out of print, and so I can't get the 3rd and 4th library edition format, so that's why I'm going to get the omnibus edition ones. But after having someone give the omnibus edition to me on Christmas, I found out that the second omnibus edition is out of print, and costs like a crap ton of money. So yeah, maybe it was just my destiny to not read Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 8. Next up, End of the Effing World, Charles Forman. Forceman. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting little graphic novel. It's, the simplicity of it works, which you don't really think it would, because, like, if you look at the illustrations, there's just nothing. Like, there's no background. Oh my gosh, I just opened it up to the weirdest page possible. There we go, that's less weird. No, not entirely less weird. There we go, a moon. A moon's not weird. Yeah, it surprisingly works in its simplicity, and I think the Netflix series is pretty good also. Next up, we have Death Note 1, 2, and 3. Let me move these over so you can see them. I've read the first two, and these are the black editions, so they collect 2 volumes apiece. This first one, volumes 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, 5 and 6. I've read this one and this one, but not this one, because I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I really like this series, though. I really like the writing, I really like the philosophy, the story, and the themes. Yeah, it's a really good read for anyone who wants a really thematically rich manga. Next up, My Friend Dahmer, one of my favorite comics of all time. It's just so emotionally riveting in a way you wouldn't expect, you know, something about the origin story of a serial killer. And the author, Derf Beckderf, he knew Jeffrey Dahmer in high school, so it's written by someone who knew him in person. And it's done in a way that, like, you don't empathize with him or sympathize with him, but it's still surprisingly emotionally resonant in a way you wouldn't expect. Next up, I have Sin City Volumes 1 and 2, The Hard Goodbye, and A Dame to Kill For. I want to get the rest of the volumes, and I want to get them in this edition, because, you know, I'm OCD about stuff like that. I have to get them all in the same edition. And I haven't read these yet. I have a lot of them that I haven't read. But I like Frank Miller, I like his writing, I like his gritty, grounded, realistic comic books. So yeah. Buffy Omnibus, whoopsie. This first one's has a little bend on it, which I hate. Probably can't see it, but, I've only ever read this first one, and I think it's pretty interesting. It's an interesting, retelling of the movie in a way that's canon to the show. But then I have, Volume 2, Volume 4, Volume 5, and Volume 6. Yep, I haven't read those yet, but I probably will sometime. I find a lot of these at Ollie's. Those are that's a good place to find cheap comics. Firefly, Serenity, Those Left Behind. I really want to get this in hardback because it's the only one I don't have in hardback. But I have all of the other ones. There's No Power in the Verse, Leaf on the Wind, The Shepherd's Tale, and Better Days and Other Stories. I haven't read Boom Studios' Firefly comic yet, but I probably will at some point. You know, I'm kind of busy. I'm a college student. I have a lot of interests. They range so widely, I'm not able to keep tabs on all of them. But, yeah, I think my favorite of the Firefly comics was this one, Leaves on the Wind, and then No Power in the Verse was also pretty good. But then these two just were not as good. I think the reason why is because so much of what made the Firefly show such a classic and have such a huge fan base is the interaction between the actors. People call Firefly the greatest ensemble cast ever assembled, and it is. Like, the actors bounce off each other so well, that is what made the show as great as it was. But that's something that doesn't really exist in comic books. You know, it's medium specificity. Actors, you know, it's all about dialogue and artwork in comic books, and so the comic books just weren't as good as the show, but they were still good. Next up is 2 Alan Moore books, Watchmen, V for Vendetta. A lot of people say Watchmen, this right here, a lot of people call this the greatest comic book ever written, and I see why. I've read it before. I'll probably go back and reread it at some point. It's just amazing. It's a masterpiece. Then we have V for Vendetta, another really great comic. I love Alan Moore. These things both really help to elevate the comic medium from just being seen as children's entertainment to being like a legit form of storytelling. And I probably will go back and read both of these, because when I read them I was younger, didn't quite understand them. I didn't quite understand all the politics in V for Vendetta, or the philosophy in Watchmen, so I probably will one day. So yeah, next up I'm going to show you guys my single issues. I have 2 little packs here that I haven't looked through all of them yet. My parents got them for me from Ollie's, but they're all pretty interesting. You know, it's some classic ones: Spider-Man, Superman. I looked through one of them to see what they had. Green Hornet, Batman. It's just just assorted random ones. Star Wars. Whoopsie daisy. There we go. Number 11. Yeah. Those are. I might go back and read some of the ones in there someday. But yeah. Next up, Action Comics 1000. Great way to celebrate 80 years of Superman. I did a ranking of all these stories. I really like that issue. Next up, Alias, issue number 1. I have the first trade back of this, but I haven't read it yet. But I should, because this is a really good series. I love the series, Jessica Jones, the Netflix series. Yeah, Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. One of these I've read, one of these I haven't. I have 2 Avengers ones. I think it's this one that I've read. You know, I got them both for Free Comic Book Day. It was pretty good. I like Jason Aaron as a writer. So yeah. Avengers Endgame Prelude. I haven't read this yet. I got it when I went to go see Endgame at the premiere. My local comic shop had it out. But yeah. Batman DC Rebirth issue number 1. That was pretty solid. I have the first trade back of this. I just haven't read it. I just read this one issue right here, and it was pretty interesting. I should go back and read that trade back sometime. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? Yeah. 5, 6. Batman vs. Ninja Turtles comics. I just kind of started getting these on a whim. It was back when I was first getting into comics, and I'm like, you know what? Who doesn't want to see Batman fight the Ninja Turtles? I haven't watched the animated movie yet, but I should. I probably will pick that up sometime. Yeah, I mean, this series wasn't, you know, well written or anything. It wasn't art or anything like that, but it was entertaining. Then I got this. I got Batman The Wedding, because everyone went apeshit about it. I could understand, you know, I haven't really been keeping track. This is issue number 50 of Batman Rebirth, so it's been going on for 4 years now. And I haven't really been keeping track of it as well as I should have. But I do understand why some fans really, really did not like this issue. And didn't really like the fact that it didn't pay off what the series had been building toward. Next up is Batman White Knight issue 1. I really like this series. It was an alternate universe series where the Joker went sane and, like, prepared a law case against Batman. And I shouldn't say I like the series. I like this issue because this is the only one I read. And I heard, you know, they released the trade back a couple months after this came out. And I heard that the overall series was just okay. Because it was too in love with itself to really be, like, well written. But I like the art style. I like the concept and, like, the premise. But yeah, I might go back and read that whole series one day. Next up is Bloodshot. I got this for Free Comic Book Day. I don't really know what it's about. I just kind of grabbed it on a whim. Buffy the Vampire Slayer: The High School Years. This is interesting. I mean, I don't think I've read this yet, but yeah, it does seem like it'd be a pretty cool series. Yeah, Buffy Chaos Bleeds. I think I just kind of bought this on a whim also from my local comic shop when I was first getting into comics. I haven't read it yet, but I should. Yeah. Yep, let me go grab another set. Another free comic book day thing, Buffy and Firefly. I read the Firefly one. I don't think I read the Buffy, or no, I did read the Buffy one. They're both pretty cool. They're both the Boom Studios one, the Boom Studios reboot. So they don't, the Buffy one isn't in the same continuity as the show. But it was still an entertaining read. Next up, Captain America Man Out of Time, all 5 issues. I got this because I really like Mark Waid. You can't see it. Sorry about the lighting. I really like Mark Waid as a writer. And so I haven't read it yet. I haven't read like the crap ton of these. I need to read more comics, said no one ever. But yeah, I got it because I like Mark Waid, and it's probably a pretty good series. It got good reviews on Comic Book Roundup. Then there's Captain America Corps. I like Captain America as a character. He's one of my favorite superheroes. Once again, I haven't read this yet, but like I said, it got good reviews, so I'll go back and read it at some point. Then there's Free Comic Book Day, Civil War 2. I heard Civil War 2 isn't very good. This is just the first issue of it. Spoiler alert, this is the one where Thanos just straight up kills War Machine. I read parts of this one, and I read the part where that happened, so yeah, that was interesting. Next up is Deadly Class issue 1. I have read this. I like Ed Brubaker as a writer. Or no, Ed Brubaker didn't write this. Whoopsie daisy. I read this because the Russo brothers are making a show out of it on Sci-Fi, and I love the Russo brothers. So, it seemed pretty good. I might pick up the trade back at some point and start reading the whole series. Next up, we have Detective Comics 1000. Great way to celebrate 80 years of Batman. I might do a ranking video of all of these stories. I think my favorite one was one called, it was called like The Family or something. It was about Batman asking the Bat family to meet up on a rooftop, and so I was like, okay, this seems pretty cool, and just the way it all played out was really touching. Next up, Fantastic Four, number 1. I haven't read this yet, but I think, you know, it's a good way to bring back Fantastic Four into the mainstream Marvel continuity. Fallen Sun, Death of Captain America, and Iron Man. This one's about Hawkeye trying to take over the mantle of Captain America, but then deciding not to. This one I haven't read yet, but it's probably about Iron Man's guilt, because in the comics, after Captain America died, it was kind of Iron Man's fault. It was right after Civil War. Then next up is Frankenstein. This is just kind of an interesting retelling of the book Frankenstein in comic form. This one's interesting because like the staples are on this side, and so it opens this way, so it reads like a manga, which is interesting. But yeah, you know, I'm a fan of the novel Frankenstein, so I thought I'd pick this up for Free Comic Book Day, or not for Free Comic Book Day, but Halloween Comic Fest, so yeah. Next up is Hawkeye, the complete Volume 1. This is probably the most rare, most, like, cool thing that I have. It's the complete Hawkeye's first standalone series, all 4 issues of it. And I guess that's a spoiler alert, because I guess it ends with his death, but, yeah. Captain America, Thor, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, Daredevil, Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, The Thing, all of them crowding around Hawkeye's funeral, Black Panther. But yeah, I haven't read that yet, but I probably will, because I'm a fan of Hawkeye. I used to like archery, so yeah. Hellblazer, Constantine. I've heard that this series is really good. I like Neil Gaiman, and Alan Moore worked on the series a little bit, and I like him. I read this one a little bit, and I like it a fair amount. It's okay. Next up, we have Hellboy Volume 1, Seed of Destruction. Issue number 1. I read this, about the time that the movie Hellboy was going to come out, and I thought it was okay, A lot of people really like the Hellboy comic series, and I just never gotten into it, but, it's probably good. Next up is Jinx World, Brian Michael Bendis, Powers, Scarlet, Murder Incorporated. It's pretty cool. I read all 3 of these ones. I like Brian Michael Bendis as a writer, and I think that these 3 series has had potential. Next up is Killer Be Killed, issue number 1. I like Ed Brubaker as a writer, and so this issue was pretty cool. I really do want to get the trade back to this and read that, because that really piqued my interest. Next up is The Kingdom, the complete series, issues 1 and 2 by Mark Waid. It's set in the same continuity as Kingdom Come, which is one of the best comics ever written. And so it was okay. It's an interesting continuation, but not anywhere near as good as Kingdom Come. Then I have the League of Volunteers, issue number 1, then 1 of 3, and 2 of 3. My parents got these for me in Ireland, because they're supposed to be like an Irish version of the Avengers, which is interesting. And so yeah, next up is Marvel Legacy. This is something that came out a few years ago that just kind of established where everyone was in the Marvel Universe at the time. Next up is The Lost Boys, issue number 1. I haven't read this yet, but I have the trade back for it, so I probably will read it at some point. I really like the movie The Lost Boys. It's such a classic vampire movie. DC Nation number 1. This is interesting. I read it a while ago, so I don't really remember it. But it was an interesting kind of like way of establishing where the DC Universe was at that point in the continuity. Next up is Spawn. Got this for Free Comic Book Day. Haven't read it yet, but you know, I might someday. Amazing Spider-Man, once again, Free Comic Book Day. I read this. It was pretty cool. Pretty entertaining. You can't not like Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man number 1. Haven't read this yet, but well, I'll get around to it. Then another Free Comic Book Day thing, Spider-Man. Yeah, once again, haven't read this yet, but I'll get around to it. Let me go grab that last stack. Next up, we have Spike, The Devil You Know. Once again, just kind of bought this on a whim because I wanted something to buy from my comic book store. Then I have Spike vs. Dracula, the complete series. Got this from somewhere in the town where I went to college. It's pretty cool. Interesting enough. Then we have three or four different Star Wars things. One about Han and Chewie. One about various characters. One about something else. I only ever read the one about Han and Chewie, but it was pretty cool. Pretty interesting. Keeps using the word interesting. Next up we have Stranger Things. I haven't read this yet, but I have the trade back for it, so I'll get it at some point. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or it's not Buffy, it's just Tales of the Crypt, but it's written by Joss Whedon. It's a vampire kind of horror series that I haven't read yet, but I'll get around to it. Something to do with Rise of the Turtles. Bleh, who cares about Rise of the Turtles? Now we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number... I really don't know what the issue number is, but I got it for Free Comic Book Day and read it. It was pretty cool. I really want to get into that IDW Ninja Turtle series. I just haven't. Thor number 1. This is the one that made me get into Jason Aaron as a writer. Whoops, I'm sorry. I read it and I liked it a fair amount, so I might get into Jason Aaron's run on Thor later. Walking Dead number 163. Conquered is what it's called. I haven't read it, but I probably will. Because I read the trade backs. Reprint of issue number 1. I got this for Walking Dead Day. Next up is Walking Dead 2-day special. There's a story that focuses on Morgan, one on Michonne, one on Tyrese. It was pretty cool. Interesting look at, like, you know, where the characters were before they encountered the main group. Walk Through Hell number 1. I haven't read that yet. I just got it for Halloween Comic Fest. You know, they had a lot of horror comics on sale. Year of the Villain, haven't read that yet, but I probably will at some point. Uncanny X-Men number 1, a way of bringing the X-Men back into mainstream continuity. So I might read this. So yeah, that's it for my single issues. Sorry I've been speeding through them so fast. I'm kind of on a time crunch. So let me go grab some trade backs.